Hi AP Scholars. I wanted to just do one more quick video to elaborate on what I meant about form equals function. Specifically for this video, I want to focus on a couple of examples from Pico Iyer in Praise of the Humble, comma, essay, and some passages from Fahrenheit 451 to demonstrate for you what I mean by the concept of mirroring. So I'll recall for you the passage from Pico Iyer's essay in Praise of the Humble, comma, here. He writes, add it to the present clause, and of a sudden, the mind is, quite literally, given pause to think. Take it out if you wish or forget it, and the mind is deprived of a resting place. So if you remember, we may have talked about this in class, some of you observed this right away, that in the first half of the sentence, Iyer actually mimics the content of his sentence. So he inserts commas in order to illustrate what he's actually talking about. As he inserts the comma, the reader then is able to pause for a moment and give ourselves a minute to think. In the second half of the sentence, delineated with the semicolon, he removes the comma altogether as he's talking about removing the comma, and we as the reader feel the difference between a sentence with many commas versus a sentence without any commas, taking away that resting place, so to speak. Again, later in the essay, he does something very similar in the second to last paragraph of the essay. He writes, thus all these tiny scratches give us breadth and heft and depth. A world that has only periods is a world without inflections. It is a world without shade. It has a music without sharps and flats. It is a martial music. It has a jack-boot rhythm. Words cannot bend and curve. A comma, by comparison, catches the gentle drift of the mind and thought, turning it in on itself and back on itself, reversing, redoubling, and returning along the course of its own sweet river music, while the semicolon brings clauses and thoughts together with all the silent discretion of a hostess arranging guests around her dinner table. So you can see, once again, the difference in the first part of the paragraph, the difference between sentences that are split with periods only versus in the middle of the paragraph, a sentence that is split with commas, and you can see the effect of that is the effect that he's talking about, sort of allowing the mind to wander and meander and come back and kind of flow on and continue on in its thinking. And finally, after the semicolon, he talks about, which we almost notice if we're not paying attention to it, he talks about how the semicolon smoothly and sort of subtly brings clauses together. I want to take a look then at a passage from Fahrenheit in which Bradbury also does this mirroring effect. And this is going to be one of the passages you're working with for your work this week. So I won't go into too much detail, but I want to bring this passage to your attention as we think about form equaling function and the idea of mirroring. One drop of rain, Clarice. Another drop, Mildred. A third, the uncle. A fourth, the fire tonight. 1, Clarice. 2, Mildred. 3, uncle. 4, fire. 1, Mildred. 2, Clarice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Clarice, Mildred, uncle, fire. Sleeping tablets, men, disposable tissue, coattails, blow, wad, flush. Clarice, Mildred, uncle, fire. Tablets, tissues, blow, wad, flush. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, rain. The storm, the uncle laughing, thunder falling downstairs, the whole world pouring down, the fire gushing up in a volcano, all rushing on down around in a spouting roar and rivering stream toward morning. So again, I'm going to let you kind of chew on this passage a little bit, but as you do so with your work this week, I want you to keep in mind this concept of mirroring and the idea that form equals function. One final passage I want to take a look at, and again, you're going to be working with this passage this week, reads like this on page 17 in Fahrenheit 451. And in her ears, the little seashells, the thimble radios tamped tight, and an electronic ocean of sound, of music and talk and music and talk, coming in on the shore of her unsleeping mind. The room was indeed empty. Every night the waves came in and bore her off on their great tides of sound, floating her, wide-eyed, toward morning. So by comparison, I want to draw your attention back to this passage from Pico Iyer's essay. A comma, by comparison, catches the gentle drift of the mind and thought, turning in on itself and back on itself, reversing, redoubling, and returning along the course of its own sweet river music. So keeping in mind this idea of mirroring, this idea of mirroring in which the author is actually mimicking with his syntax or sentence structure what the content of the passage is talking about. And again, thinking about form equals function as we continue to look at your fine lines, asking yourself the question, what does the writer's syntax contribute to the overall meaning or impact of the sentence or passage?